Ajá, doña Karen. Está recording, entonces le voy a dar pausa hasta que la gente start recording. Okay, the recording has started just in case, and as soon as the meeting is over, I will send you the Zoom recording so you can have it.
Very cool. I love getting questions, and I love putting them out so other people can benefit from them. So thank you very much.
No,
absolutely. We're super excited. As we show you, we got your books right here. So now we have to send you a picture
one too.
of both of us holding the book, not
Yes.
only you, right?
I was hearing this morning you're very close to 10,000 followers in the YouTube channel, right?
Yes, I am.
Hopefully we're gonna take care of something today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate all the support.
No, you leave a lot of good information there, and I can imagine you do a lot of work to do 10, 15 minutes every day. It's a lot of reading and a lot of preparation.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I've been doing the reading for about 20 years, right? That was always my morning, right? I get up, have coffee, read for about 45 minutes to an hour. The only thing that changed is now I take notes and then I talk to a camera for 10 to 15 minutes. So it's definitely a habit that I do, and I do it every day, every day, even if I'm on vacation. It's just part of who I am.
I think that's part of the success story.
Absolutely. Well, everybody knows that knowledge is power. You can't have what you have, and that's in the invitation that we did. I don't know if we shared it with you or not. That was the subject line. It was like, knowledge is power. And we try to teach that to not only our associates, who a lot of them are joining us. We do have people from outside brokerages that are colleagues of ours that we have a great relationship with, that we had obviously extended the invitation because, this doesn't happen every day. And we do very, very lucky to have you. And we also do have some other investors, actually clients of ours that are here in the Zoom, joining the Zoom.
That's
some
awesome.
possible investors. So you have kind of like a mixed crowd.
That's wonderful. And Christina and Jose, this says a lot about who you are, right? You're opening it up not only to your team, but to other clients, and then other, some people may look at as competitors, and I'm glad you don't look at it that way. I don't either.
Not at all.
Right? It's all about helping, and then because what you put out there comes back. So congratulations.
Absolutely.
Thank you for doing that. We do have the same philosophy, just as you said. We're here in a business to serve each other, and the only way to achieve that is if we all grow at the same time. So we do always invite our colleagues, whoever wants to join us. We have a big network, and we send it through WhatsApp, through email. Whoever's joining us, we never charge for our trainings. We do share. And there's actually, the more that we are competitive in the market, the better service that we provide. So it all comes to that.
Well said. I agree 1,000%.
Excellent. So we're 4 p.m. I think we should start.
Yes.
We would like to welcome you again. Since I read the book, I knew I have to do this. I knew it. And I have shared your book with some of the people that I see here in the Zoom meeting. I see people from Argentina, Ecuador, Colombia. Is Spain, right?
I don't know.
Graciela is Spain.
No, she's Colombian as well. We do have all South America here. Ana Maria Sidan, she's a very good friend of mine, also an associate from another brokerage. We have Cuba, we have South America.
Wow.
So a lot of people
from
here.
all over the world.
We have Venezuela.
There you go. We have Quito there.
That's pretty cool.
There.
Yes, from Quito.
Nice.
Rica too.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we'd like to welcome you, and as we talked earlier, it will be interesting to make this more like a conversation, more like a regular talk between friends, to learn about your experience, to learn what you did good and what you did bad, and maybe you can start sharing some of that with us.
Absolutely. Just so I'm clear, do you want me to talk from the investor standpoint, from a real estate agent standpoint? How can I get started to make sure this is valuable for everyone?
We have real estate agents and investors in the same Zoom.
Well,
Okay.
just to clarify that question, I do truly believe that as a real estate consultant,
Hmm.
if you want to do a good service to your clients, you do need to think as an investor. So probably
Yeah.
that answers your question, right?
Yeah.
Because even though we
Perfect.
might be here consultants, the goal for our, for our team, as Jose mentioned, as the director of investments in our company, is for ourselves to become investors.
Awesome.
We have everything in hand. You were saying in your book, the best way to find the deals is in the MLS. So if you don't think, if you don't have the mind of an investor, you will never be able to find these deals and transmit the knowledge. So I
Yeah.
do really believe that everybody here in this Zoom should be treated as an investor.
Awesome. So we'll start there. And again, I'm going to be here as long as there's questions. So there is no rush. I'll answer any and all questions. Really what my story keys off of is, again, if you read in the book, because I was a full-time employee, right? I could be traveling all over the world, many times to South America, for example. And, I could be in, Santiago, Chile one day, Sydney, Australia by Wednesday, and then maybe Japan by Friday. That was how crazy my life was. So that was my day job. And what I was able to do over 15 years was just that: buy one rental at a time, again, out of the multiple listing service or realtor.com or Redfin or Zillow. But how I was able to do that is I had focused, consistent effort over time. So let me explain that in a little more detail and what makes my story unique and what I think is key for investors. In the space of helping other investors and real estate investors, which my YouTube channel book allows me to be in now, lots of people reach out to me and they go something like this: I'm really excited. I can't wait to get started. I'm going to spend 20 hours this weekend watching YouTube University, reading Bigger Pockets, going to REI Club, whatever it is. And what I have to tell you is that's not the right answer. Real estate is not something you can force in a weekend. If you are going to be a good real estate investor, what you need to have is you need to have little chunks of time, preferably every day. I'm willing to accept 6 days a week, right? If you want to take Sunday off, God did. So, hey, I'll give you one day off. But you do that over time. And one of the great things about my story that I did not appreciate before I retired was I looked at my market every day for 20 years now. In 20 years, I may have not looked at it 20 times, right? For whatever reasons, travel or wife's birthday or whatever, right? There's only 20 days in 20 years I haven't looked at it. So how do you translate that as a realtor, an investor, or someone thinking about it? Is you need to start small. So pick a location, right? Not, like Santiago, Chile, just because I said it earlier, right? It's not Santiago, Chile. That's a massive city, right?
Right.
What you need to do is you need to focus in on I don't know what it would be called, a section, a town. I don't know if it's zip code, but you need to get really micro. So I'll use my example from my book. I chose a city called Fresno, California. It's about 1 million people. What I chose to do is I took my entire market of Fresno down to a zip code, 93703. It's called the Mayfair District, right? Every city, every location has its own little name. And then what I did is once I was in that location, I even got smaller, right? I didn't look at everything in the Mayfair. That was probably 20,000 homes. I had to look at 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or 4-bedroom, 2-bath homes between 1,100 square feet and 1,500 square feet. And I looked at that same search every day for like 2 years. And it feels odd. It doesn't change very fast. But when you watch it over time, you start to understand what a deal looks like. You start to understand what's overpriced, what's underpriced. And you can't do that, even if you are a real estate agent and this is your full-time job. You can't intimately learn a market by looking at Fresno, by looking at Santiago, Chile. You have to start small, build a base of expertise, and then grow from there. And now when you are talking to your real estate agents or your real estate investors, your job to do is in that first phone call, that first coffee, that first breakfast, dinner, whatever it is you need to have conversations like this. Like, oh, if all you're getting out of your person on the other side of the table is I want a deal, you failed.
Mhm.
That's not, everybody wants a deal. You don't even know what a deal is. What a deal to you is maybe not to them. What you really need to be talking about, and you need to communicate to them, and they frankly should communicate to you, is I look for this. I want 3 or 4 bedroom houses in the Mayfair district of Fresno between 1,100 and 1,500 square feet, priced between X and Y. The more tight you get on your focus,
Mhm.
the more deals you will attract. And then once you build the base, you can grow out, right? Because the first thing I did is I did Mayfair, like 2 years. I looked every day. So what is that, like 730 days in a row?
Mhm.
And then I said, okay, now I'm going to do is there's another little town called Old Fig Garden. I'm going to go there next, but I'm still 3 and 4 bedrooms. Why did I do that? It was close. It was a little older. It's a little nicer part of town. I had to learn it all over again because a 3 bedroom, 2 bath in the Mayfair is not the same price as the Old Fig Garden. And then as an investor, the rents are different. Oh,
Mhm.
by the way, a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 car garage in the Mayfair would go for $1,250. A 3-1 in the Old Fig Garden might go for $1,200, right? So I had to relearn all these things. And if you go too wide, i.e. trying to look at a market with 1 million people, you're not going to get anywhere because you won't learn anything. It'll be like trying to go 50 different directions an inch at a time. You end up nowhere, right? So my suggestion to all investors and all real estate agents, at least in the beginning, is you're trying to build a foundation, focus, and consistent effort. That really keys, my foundation of success and why I was able to buy out of the MLS, because everything I bought until I retired was out of the multiple listing service. So that means it was publicly available. That means every real estate agent in Fresno saw it before I did.
Mhm.
And we were still able to buy things and retire on it. So it is absolutely possible.
When you started buying, does the market was a buyer's market or a seller's market?
That's a good question. So I start my journey in 2002. It was probably even when I started, but you got to remember, I'm on the other side of that bubble.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it very quickly became a seller's market.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to today. There is a difference, which is probably your leading question. Today is very different than say 06, which is very seller market. The
Mhm.
buyers are different. And this is where, as investors, real estate agents, you must pay attention. At least in Fresno, and I assume many other markets, the buyers today, for the most part, are owners, right? Owner occupants.
Yes.
Back in 06, it was about 60-40, right?
Mhm.
There was still a bunch of investors because the investors were getting stupid loans.
Mhm.
All those loans that blew up, adjustable rate mortgages, 2 and 28s, 5-year ARMs, right? They were creating cash flow with bad debt that blew up and debt that caused foreclosures. The lending market today, absolutely different. 30-year fixed below 3%.
Mhm.
And the only market that's really working is FHA first-time buyers.
Yes.
So what that means, right? Real estate agents' ears should perk up when I say that. So what does it mean to have an FHA-based or owner-occupied based market?
Mhm.
It means clean, affordable properties sell like hotcakes. I mean,
Yes.
like bam, 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 bam.
Absolutely.
So if you know that, the flip side of the coin is what's not selling,
Mhm.
right? Because there's something that's like making it rain, but not working. There's a couple of things. And Lord, you don't like what's going on. Else is not selling. Properties that need work, they're not selling.
Mhm.
So again, what is hot and what is very different today than 06.
Yes, I do think that it's key what you just said here, just to clear some doubts that we have with a few investors. You're saying that we need to focus on properties that are clean and affordable that will apply for the FHA loan. And, that's pretty much saying, single family homes. A lot of our investors do say, I want a condo here and a condo there, and it's a key component. We do believe that, that it's best to have either a single family home that will allow for the home buyer to be a prospective buyer for the home with an FHA, or actually going to the multi-family section, which is also something that you speak in your book as how you started thinking that multifamily homes would also be a great opportunity for investors. Hello? And we got disconnected here.
Yeah, he got disconnected.
Yes. Just in case, please, the rest of the people who are joining the Zoom, los demás que están en el Zoom, si pueden siempre mantener sus teléfonos en silencio para evitar cualquier interferencia, les vamos a agradecer un montón. Esperemos a que se vuelva a conectar Mike. No sé si es que, Karen, si es que tú puedes ir monitoreando las preguntas, porque por alguna razón aquí no nos está saliendo el...
No me está saliendo, estoy
Hello?
tratando de ver, pensé que era yo.
O sea, yo sé que a Cristi dijo, tengo una pregunta, pero no nos sale la pregunta aquí.
No, yo levanté la mano, pero no la he escrito. Tengo que escribirla.
Y ponla en el chat, por favor, porque es más fácil monitorearla en el group chat.
Sí, en el group chat mejor.
Sí. No te escribió por el... No sé si es que al momento las personas que nos están viendo, que no son parte del equipo de Real Estate Solutions, tienen alguna pregunta que les podamos aclarar con lo que hemos estado conversando del tema del mercado, el enfoque. Muchos de nuestros clientes son del exterior, son extranjeros. Se está uniendo ya Michael ahorita. Pero simplemente para aclararles, nosotros hemos hecho básicamente el mismo estudio. Oh, you're back. Hi, Mike.
Yeah. Hi, sorry. I don't know what happened. It closed and it came back.
All right.
Well, that's the beauty of technology, right? That we can just jump back in. And you were saying about, how important it is for the FHA loan, which is, now that's where we're focusing. It's when you do buy a property, you do need to think about how you're going to sell it whenever you want to liquidate your asset, which is one of the main components that we talk to our investors. What is your exit strategy? And if you're going to get a condo and then you have like thousands of condos all over Miami or South Florida, it's not going to be possible because of the financing, right? That is so limited now to the first home buyers with a conventional loan, or, with a 5% loan, you cannot buy them unless you put 20% down. So you're like on key as of how we think about, the
Awesome.
type of investments that we want to do, and also moving forward towards something that we're just speculating or entering now, which is the multifamily, small multifamily buildings.
Sure.
Because I know that you did, so you did move towards those in your career. Can you speak about that? How did it go for you moving towards the multifamilies?
Yeah. So, sorry first for the technology issue. I didn't do it. It was the internet, blame somebody else. But yeah, first off, I wanted to be clear. When I got into real estate investing, bought that first house, bought the second house, bought the third house, I was only looking for houses because that's all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So again, the market went up, which I think we could be in one of those markets today in some cities.
Mm-hmm.
And, the house I bought for 107, 4 years later was worth 264,
Wow.
which is crazy. Right. The problem was it rented for 1,100 and it still rented for 1,100.
Mm-hmm.
So as an investor, it made no sense.
Mm-hmm.
And as we see later, it blows up. The person loses it to foreclosure and it sells for 75 grand. That's kind of the whole story, right?
Mm-hmm.
But near the peak, sort of 06, we were not done. We still needed to grow. And while one part of the market got hot, single family homes,
Mm-hmm.
there was another part of the market, small multifamilies. And just so we're clear, for me, that was 5
Mm-hmm.
to 20 units. That's all I've ever bought. I've never bought anything bigger than 20. But what I saw is, because again, I was a cash flow investor. While
Mm-hmm.
it was certainly nice to appreciate from 100 to 260, It wasn't my plan. It was like an accident.
Mhm.
But what I saw is I needed a 9th house because I can't retire on the 8th. So I had to do something. So we did what's called a 1031 exchange. We sold the house for $260,000. We moved the money into a 5-unit building. The 5-unit building cost less. It cost $220,000 roughly, but it rented for $3,000.
Mhm.
So think about that, right?
Amazing.
You sell it for $40,000 more, you buy it less, but your rent triples. Now, out of the gate, I'm like, yay, I win. Truth is, I did win some, but I didn't win as much as I thought. Because first thing you must know is multifamilies, when they're this close, because it was 5 600 square foot 1-bedroom houses connected, like one big row, right?
Mhm.
So they weren't like little houses. They were
Mhm.
like connected. Single story. They take more to manage.
Mhm.
You have to pay for a gardener, right? I never had to pay for a gardener because all I had was houses. I didn't know that. I had to pay some water and garbage because there was outside water use. You can't bill the tenants for that. You're the owner. So there were some learning curves. The other thing you must realize is turnover is what kills landlords, right? What I mean by kills meaning it saps your profit. I didn't appreciate this in the beginning. My apartments turn about every 2.5 years. My houses turn every 8 years,
Wow.
right? So think about that. In fairness, let's complete that story. My average turn on a house is about 10 grand. My average turn on a apartment is somewhere between 2,500 and 4 grand. So they turn more, but they cost less because they're smaller.
Mhm.
But when turnover is the big gotcha, at least again, my mistake, I didn't appreciate how expensive and how frequent apartment turns are. And especially owning apartments in a recession like we are today, that's hard. That's hard, right? You're renting to a very vulnerable part of the market, especially in a health crisis where restaurant and hotel and all these other folks are asked to stay home.
Mhm.
That's a lot of my tenants, so it can be tough. So I guess what I want to say here is yes, apartments can be wildly successful. They do have different cost or expense structures, but what I want you to hear from me is bigger is not always better, right? Grant Cardone, Florida-based guy, loves to talk about bigger is better. It's absolutely not true. I think bigger is better, meaning a higher return or a higher yield.
Mhm.
And it has been possible since 2010 through about 2018, 19. Bigger is better. The cost structure worked. But some deals are getting a little stretched in 2020 and may not be as profitable as they could be. But I like apartments when they make sense. It's just a lot of people think owning apartments is cool because you get to say how many units you have. That's not my thing.
Mhm.
I don't care. I want to talk about cash flow.
Yes.
So yeah, really do your numbers because those multifamily assets might be great deals, or they could just get you, negative cash flow or what I call alligators in the book. Yeah.
Yes. No, and you were saying specifically about what you're talking about. I think it's important for the rest of the people in the Zoom to understand what you're talking about, the outside forces. The unseen things that can happen as cutting the loan or paying some sort of association, which Florida is
Yeah.
built with HOAs dues, and the taxes is also something that you mentioned in the book, and definitely the cost of turnover. That is something that a lot of people do not factor into when you're coming to see your net, your cash on cash, which is
Yeah.
exactly what you say. It's not about how much you're buying it for, it's how much money you're putting it down and how much you're bringing it down, which leads me to the question that probably a lot of people who read the book are going to ask you is your rule of thumb. That at the beginning your rule of thumb was 1% of the purchase, which in the example that you just gave us, 107 for 1100 was a perfect example of the rule of thumb versus what would happen to the next investor who wants to buy it for 264 and receiving the same rent, which is exactly what happens in the Florida market. And that's what we're trying to teach our investors. Florida
awesome.
is not really a place where you can get this rule of thumb. The properties that we've been looking at, that's where we at, either a little bit higher, maybe sometimes of the 1%. So I do think it's very important for you to clarify that or to talk about that subject.
Well, that's a great catch, Christina. So again, I'll go through the full evolution, right? When I started researching real estate, everybody looks for the answer, right? What's a good deal?
Mhm.
And, 20 years ago, the 1% rule was just catching on. And it's kind of sexy, right? It's easy. You can calculate it in your head. So I used it. I used it for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, like it was the answer.
Mhm.
And, after doing this for a while and doing math, it's frankly, the 1% rule can lead to very dangerous decisions. It usually takes you to markets that are riskier,
Mhm.
on the lower income scale,
Mhm.
are very bad in recessions, and often take you to not only, cities that are a little bit rougher, but can take you to the roughest place within a semi-rough city, if you know what I mean. Kind of that compounding rule. And I have seen too many people get burned by the 1% rule. I no longer use it. I haven't used it for a decade. So you brought up a term earlier that I use. It's called cash on cash. I have retermed it yield, because too many people, when they use cash on cash, they add in their equity gain, which, if you know my story, I don't count appreciation. I don't count equity. I don't count any of that. I want to know how much money is coming into my checking account and how much money is leaving. I don't care about principal pay down. I don't care about tax advantages. All that other stuff happens, and it's nice. But at the end of the day, I need to pay my bills with what's left over.
Mhm.
All of that. So my math is very simple. And it's math. It's not algebra. It's not calculus. It's just math. The denominator is how much cash do I have to put down to control and make this asset perform. Typically speaking, there are 3 components: down payment, closing cost, and the third one is make ready. So make ready can be 0. Like if you buy a clean turnkey unit, that could be 0. Or you're buying a junker and you need to spend 15 grand after you buy it, making it rent ready, right? That's the difference. And that's why there's that third variable.
Mhm.
So let's tie this back, and then I'll go to the numerator in a minute. Remember what we talked about before my internet blew up? Turnkey properties, clean properties today, they're being outbid by FHA buyers,
Mhm.
right? So in today's market, that's probably the wrong place for investors to compete,
Mhm.
because you can't win, right? They can come in for less than you. They got lower interest rates than you. There's not enough inventory. It's just tough.
Mhm.
So you're probably not going to play there today, September of 2020. January of 2020 is a fine market to play. It's just, you got to remember, the market's changed. That's why I look every day.
Mhm.
So now go to the numerator. The numerator is expected yearly cash flow once leased, right? So if you need 30 days to do the make ready, you don't count that, right? It's once this is leased at market. So it's simply a monthly calculation times 12, right? You turn a month of cash flow into a year.
Mhm.
So it's rent
Times 12.
minus all of your expenses.
Mhm.
Mortgage payment, your full payment, not just interest. I hate people that, well, my payment so kind of feels like real money to me. Whatever. Then there's taxes, insurance, could be HOA, right? Could be property management, could be utilities, could be snow removal if you're investing. I mean, whatever it is, right? You have a reserve for bad debt or no collections. You have a reserve for capital expenditures. At the end of that monthly calculation, that number better be positive, or if it's negative, you have an alligator and you need to do something else. But assuming that monthly number is positive, you take that, say 100 times 12, you get your yearly number. That's what you put at top. That's your numerator, say 1,200. And let's say you put $24,000, down payment, closing costs, make ready. You do that math, it turns into 0.05, just doing the math in my head.
Mhm.
You take that by 100% and you get a yield of 5%.
Right. Cash
In
on
that
cash.
simple example, cash on cash.
Mhm.
So why do I do that? And here's the tie-in to this question, to your very first question. What I want new investors to do and new agents to do, and why I picked the Mayfair and why I talked about 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,100 to 1,500 is I want you to do that every day. We talked about 20 minutes a day for 6 days a week. I want you to look at that market every day and do that math. It's going to feel uncomfortable for like 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, and then you're going to start to get it. Because what you have to answer is, what is average? Once you can intelligently tell yourself and anybody in your circle what an average deal is in Santiago, Chile, or Mayfair in this particular region of this particular housing stock, you have solved the biggest step and you are ready to take over the world. Because if you know what average is, you can now focus on creating or doing good in great deals. Listed in the MLS is bad, meaning below average, or average deals. That's just what happens in a free market, right? Everything goes to average.
Right.
But if you can focus on creating good or great deals, it's not easy, right? Because you're looking at 1 or 2% of the market. You have to look every day. But if you can look to create good or great deals, you're going to very soon be financially independent. Because if average is 5% and you're doing deals where cash on cash is 7 or above, you're going to be able to compound that over time, have inflation and appreciation raises all ships. You do cash out refis or 1031s like we did, and life gets really good in 5, 8, 10 years.
That's the other question that I was going to talk to you about. What is the time, right? Because we have a philosophy here in our company that we do want to make millionaires happen. You know, I think that by doing one rental at a time, we're definitely on the right track to become a millionaire. But it doesn't take 1 year and it doesn't take one property. So you know, the numbers that we've made, it's, you know, within the next 10 years. You know, within the next 10 years, we can be looking at our portfolio as an investors and saying, okay, we have become a millionaire, right?
Yeah, I think 10 years is the right number. I really do. I would have said that before you led me there. You know, you can get lucky. You can catch a market right? I've never looked at it this way, but let me think. We probably became a millionaire from real estate after year 6 or 7. But you got to remember, we invested in a hot market. We transitioned out at the peak, right? So we had a couple of really good things going for us, but it's absolutely possible. I think most people should plan for 10 years. Absolutely. Because it takes time, folks. Just like learning your market takes time. You need to buy, you need to hold, you need to conservatively finance. That's why I hate some people out there that are always talking max leverage, and showing these spreadsheets that, you know, get you there in 4 years. That is so risky. It might work, maybe, but I wouldn't count on it.
What will be a conservative number to finance a property, in your opinion?
Well, you got to remember, it's all about cash flow for me.
Okay.
Right. So if you can cash flow a property at 90% and you have enough left over where you have cushion, go for it. Generally speaking, in a hot market like we are today, it might take 25% down, but I don't know all markets, right? So some markets are different.
Yeah, for internationals, most of the times is 30%. So that's a
Oh,
safe.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would assume most markets, if you could put 30% down, you should have healthy cash flow, unless it's like New York City or San Francisco or some stupid market.
We do have a question in the chat, which is specifically speaking about that, which is, you know, about buying cash or financing. And, you know, for us, we've read your book and we know that you started, you know, financing, which is amazing. A lot of people have this misconception that the only way that you can become an investor or a millionaire is if you buy this property's cash.
Yeah.
And it's not true. So if you can speak about that and how did it happen with you with, you know, buying with financing and then buying the other one with financing and then and so forth.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to say. First off, if folks watching this are nervous asking their question in English, they can ask it in Spanish, and I trust you two to translate for me. So if they're nervous about that, let's take that off the table. But here's the deal. You know, Dave Ramsey gets a lot of credit or whatever for talking about debt-free, right? I want to be debt-free, all of that. But if you are going to build a real estate portfolio and become financially independent with real estate, you need the leverage. You need to build a foundation. I call it phase 1 in the book, right? So what you do is And don't get me wrong, I think when you're done, so after 10 years, right, when you are a millionaire, if you want to sell off some and pay off others and be debt free, go for it. I have done that. But I was nowhere close to debt free for 15 years. Every property was leveraged about 60, 65% on average. It was only after I left my W-2 or my job and I wanted to, you know, sleep and nap and do all that stuff when I wanted that I created a whole pile of free and clear property. You don't do that in the beginning. If you buy a place and then you spend the next 7 years sacrificing and running like a little mouse to pay it off, you have missed 7 years of appreciating, because when the tide rises, you want as many ships in the water as possible. Because when the tide rises, all the ships go up. Then at the end, the water's higher. You can sell one or two, pay off the others. Success. So I am a firm believer of safe leverage. And then when you're done, if you want to, go nuts, pay everything off, totally cool. But while you're building, it's really slow and I think dangerous to do it just cash.
Completely agree with you.
But in a certain point, when you start buying properties, the banks will tell you, and you know you tell the story in your book, but like if the other guys to hear a little bit about it, it's how do you pass that barrier of the bank stopping lending you money?
Lending you money.
Yeah. So let's take the story full circle. So, you know, I started investing in 2002. Banks are really easy. You know, go through 2008. I have an 800 credit score. I have a 7-figure net worth. I have a 6-figure income job, right? So I go to a bank to buy a house, an investment house, and they have said yes to me every other time. I walk into the bank that has all my money and they tell me, no, Mr. Zuber, we can't give you a loan. You're a real estate investor. We're not lending to you anymore. I'm like, what? You could do that? Why are you saying no? So I go, okay, fine. You know, maybe you have too many of my loans, you know, because again, it's like 2008, 2009. It's kind of a messy environment. Yeah. So I go next door to another big bank and I say, great. I want to buy another investment loan. I'll put 25% down. It's a very safe loan. Here's my financial statement, my W-2, my tax return. You know, it'd be cool. They're like, no. And they weren't nice about it. They probably, so that was a wake up call. So first thing you had to do back then is realize banks have cycles. And I think we're in one of those cycles now. Banks get loose, banks get tight. Banks get loose, banks get tight. So one of the things you will learn is if you're in this game for a decade, like we're talking about, it's going to happen to you. It will, both of those things will happen. What I'm here to tell you is the lockdown in 08 through 10 was probably the hardest ever. I mean, banks would not touch us. The good news is there's a whole nother market that does what's called hard money, think expensive. But if the deals are good enough, they work, right? We bought, I don't know, 15 or so properties with hard money, which meant we were paying double-digit interest rates. We were paying 35% of purchase, so we had real skin in the game, and we had to do all the repairs. But when they're giving gold bricks away, right, which because there were deals everywhere, you do what you can. Yes. But then what we found is we started documenting our success. People started calling us and saying, we wanted to lend you money. So we discovered private money. So when the deals are good enough, money shows up is kind of the story in the book. But let's come back to today. Today, the banks say this: your first 4 loans, ridiculously easy. Loans 5 through 10, pretty easy. Little seasoning, a little more reserves, you know, all of that, but it can get done. Loan 11 and above, tough. So let's answer that question. First and foremost, you can still get a bank loan for your 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th property. You're just not going to pay good rates.
Right.
Most investors call me going, oh, I can't get on my 11th loan. They won't give me 3.5%. I'm like, well, no kidding. I don't get 3.5% either. I just did some cash out refis on a bunch of fourplexes, and I'm paying almost 7% today, or 2019, right? Because people get spoiled those first 10, they want all their loans under 4%. Well, I'm sorry. Once you have 10 loans in the current environment, you're a professional investor now. You're going to be treated differently. You're going to have to pay above 6%. So you can get an 11th, a 12th, and a 13th loan. Interest rates will be higher. They want to season the money, meaning you're not going to have 6 months of mortgage payments tucked away.
Yes, yes.
You just have to change how your deals just have to get better. What is a marginal deal, your first 10, is a alligator at deal 11 because your cost of capital is higher.
Yes.
Yeah, then you could do other things. You can work with local banks. You could do a portfolio loan on the first 5 of them, for example, right? So there's lots of ways to keep going. It's just the debt is more expensive. What people don't want to hear. Debt's just more expensive once you get to number 11.
Yes. We have another question here. I believe it's from one of investors in Ecuador. He's a foreign investor. He's asking about the taxes. And Mauricio, just to make sure here, the question is in reference of the property tax, el impuesto predial, or you're trying to talk here about the capital gain tax, which is an accountant question.
Actually, my question is if there is any income tax on the revenues you get, on the rent you get, and the income you have after paying all your expenses, would there be something to pay to the government?
Well, that depends how you run your portfolio. For example, something you may or may not know, one of the expenses landlords can take on the IRS code is depreciation. That's actually a non-cash expense. So when you put your portfolio together, right, let's just use some round numbers. Let's say for a house, you're ending up with $200 a month, which is $2,400 a year, net cash, which would ordinarily look like profit to the IRS.
Right.
If based off depreciation, you are also writing off $2,400, right, because you get to write off a certain amount every year. No, I would not pay the IRS a penny in that example. Depreciation is a non-cash expense that the IRS gives you in the tax code, which allows me to hide real income. So for me, just to put it in scope, I have about $200,000 in depreciation every year. So the first $200,000 in positive cash flow is non-taxable for me, for example.
That's a great response to all
Does that
of
make
us.
sense?
You know, depreciation and other costs that obviously an expert accountant that deals with this type of portfolios will take into consideration to, you know, to allow our investors to be on the safe side. You know, and then my accountant, he's awesome. You know, he tells me, listen, Christina, if you're paying money to the government, you know, you're blessed. It's because you are making money. You know what I'm saying? You can't expect not to pay when you are making money. And that's the way that we have to see it. Of course, he takes care of every single detail that we can get in our investment to pay what it's fair. You know, that's what you're saying. If you have depreciation income, yes, you're going to pay, but I'm still, you know, in above a 2-digit return on a cash to cash, which is, is amazing for an investor. Everything above average is amazing and on a positive level.
Very well said. Yeah. I am happy to be in a position where I pay taxes. That just means I had a good year.
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay.
Exactly. It's okay. We have another question here. One of our associates or senior associates is asking that what was your risk tolerance when you early in your career? Alejandro, if you want to extend that question a little bit more, what do you mean about the risk tolerance in the early career?
Well, I'm trying to say that how much he was available to risk, or I don't know how to say it, but how much money.
I'll take a shot and you tell me if we did any good. If not, ask again.
Okay.
So I start this journey with $40,000, but appreciate where this comes from. So it's so funny how today is so similar to 20 years ago. I had just come off a really good run in the stock market. I turned $7,000 into almost 200 grand via day trading stocks. I thought I was the next Warren Buffett. What I didn't realize is the market was going up for everyone and I was no one special. So what happened when the internet bubble blew up is I lost $160,000. So my 200K balance went all the way down to 40 grand like that. So that's where my journey begins. I am beat up. I'm depressed. I went from feeling like a genius to an idiot. I walk into a bookstore and I get Rich Dad Poor Dad. Rich Dad Poor Dad obviously changed my life. I give it all the credit in the start of my book. And I was willing, frankly, to the question, I was willing to invest all of that or risk all of that. I find that first house, which you talked about in Norris Drive, I did not know any better. I put 20% down. Why? Because that's what the bank said. I quickly realized that I can get higher leverage. This is obviously a different lending environment. So the next loan, I only put 10K down, and then I put another 10K down. So my 40K was gone after the end of the purchase of the third house. And again, let's make this clear. I have never lived in Fresno. I have never spent the night in Fresno. It was just a market that I could drive to in 2.5 hours. I have since built up a tremendous network. I have never left. I'm glad I'm there. But dude, think about that. I just got kicked in the teeth in the stock market. You know, I'm 30 years old. I got really nothing left to speak for myself. And, you know, I bet on black at the roulette wheel. And if you ever read the book, you will realize that first house I bought does not turn out well. That first tenant, painful.
3 months, right?
Yeah, just painful. And then we just kept going, right? So support of a wife, in this case, Olivia, and we just kept moving forward. So I was quite frankly willing to risk it all. I'd already lost 160 grand. So what the hell was another 40 grand? So what am I, right? But yeah, and then I do a cash out refi. That 40 grand allowed me to get those first 8 houses. I didn't put in any more capital, right? You did a cash out refi and then 1031 exchange and all that stuff. So pretty cool.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I think that's also a very important point for you to say. You speak about the fact that you never lived in Fresno, nor is your hometown, because we do have those investors say, oh, but why can't we just buy here? You know, we're here and I want to go and see it and I want to touch it and feel it. And not necessarily the best way to go.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You got to realize, again, I don't want to take this for granted. So I live in Mountain View, California, which is part of the Silicon Valley, right? It's right near Google, right near Facebook. It's crazy expensive. I mean, like highest, crazy expensive. So I could never be a buy and hold landlord here. You know, best case, I'd have one house today. One house doesn't do me any good. So live where you want. Invest where the numbers make sense. Live where you want. Invest where the numbers make sense. Now, I prefer to be able to drive, and I'm willing to drive 2.5 hours one way. So that's a 5-hour day to see one house. But you got to remember, my job took me on an airplane to 3 different cities as we kind of open it up. So I was not going to get on an airplane to go see my real estate. That's just my personal choice. If your job doesn't put you on an airplane and you like airplane travel, the world's your oyster. I was not going to get on another freaking airplane to go see my rental properties.
I don't know if you want to say something about that. You know, we do get on planes to go and see.
I'm sure you do. I mean, it's just, it's so embarrassing, right? I have flown 1,000,000 miles, but I hate every mile. I'm a nervous flyer. So, yeah, flying is not my thing, but I get it. It's vital. And if you could do it, the world becomes your oyster. I am limited where I can invest because I only want to drive. If you're willing to, you can fly a lot of places in 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
You can. The world opens up. It's awesome. Just not for me.
I've heard in your YouTube channel that you're talking a lot about the people moving out from the big cities.
Oh yeah.
And start living in less expensive cities. Do you think that trend is going to keep coming in the next year or so?
Oh, I think that's a trend that goes for 5 or 10 years. I really do. I mean, just think about it logically, right? Right. Again, I'll use California numbers. You can translate this to your cities. So in California, San Francisco is the big city by me. The average rent for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment is $4,200.
Wow.
For a shack, right? where you have shared elevators, no backyard, no parking. It's smelly, it's dirty, it's unsafe. There's no way you could raise your kids to make school, gym. It's just impossible. But if you just go an hour that way or an hour that way or an hour that way, there's a lot of housing you can get for less than $4,200 a month. Because that's what people are doing today. Is I can spend $4,200 a month for rent, or I can buy a house and pay $2,800, have more money left over. I can have a backyard for my kids when I'm on my Zoom call. I can have a garage for my gym set, and I can have a front porch to chill when I want to have a wine with my significant other. This is an investable trend. The fact that we're on a Zoom call with all these countries involved without me having to get on a plane is awesome, right? I used to have to travel to Santiago, Chile, or Sao Paulo, Brazil, or Quito, or I mean, all these places I've been to, right? So that is an investable trend. And I call it, as you've seen in my morning calls, space is good. And I think that's investable. And the other thing you have is you have millennials, which are now in their 30s, right? The early 30s. They have delayed home purchase. They have delayed having kids in general. That won't go on much longer, right? The biological clock is somewhere in the 30s, and they're going to want to have kids at least more than they are now. And you take that with space is good. They have some savings. I think home ownership is going to go up. I think owning Class A apartments in a big city is really risky today, because those are the people who have financial means. They used to like all the amenities. Now the amenities are shut down. Their kids aren't going to private school anymore. They're homeschooled. They're like, forget this. I'm done. I'm going to go get a big, 2-acre plot of land and, plant my vegetable garden. And it's absolutely going to happen. I think urban cities, specifically San Francisco, New York, are big trouble.
No, we're completely with you about the fact that it's risky. It's risky to be in a niche when your tenant, the tenant you're looking for is so limited. So when you're like oriented to 80% or 70% of the mass population of the US, then your investment becomes obviously a lot less. We're trying to minimize the risk for investors as much as we can.
That's again, just carry on that logic. And that is so wonderful that you're doing that. Because it's not only when you get in, as we open this conversation, one of the first things you said is think about your exits. And that's why single family homes or condos, when they make sense, are awesome, because you don't limit yourself on the sell. Probably the worst thing to own today, right? If you had to sell, would be like a Class A apartment building or an office or a retail, right? There are times when the market will turn against you, and your only chance to sell is a fire sale. If you're buying below the median, meaning affordable, where most people can buy it, and you have investors and owner occupants as your target, a lot less risky, a lot easier to get out. Most people think about getting in. I liked how you started with appreciating how to get out. That's very smart advice.
Yes, I mean the equity that you get on the cash flow. I mean, when you exit, as you said, that's just the icing on the cake. We're completely with you on the philosophy that we do our projections based only on the cash flow, what we can get on the cash flow. Everything above 5%. Here, our numbers are like around 6%. We consider that everything above 6%. It's amazingly well on just on a cash to cash. Whatever you can get on the equity side, once you do the exit or once you liquidate the portfolio, is just the icing on the cake, and you can easily double those numbers when you do that. And another thing that I wanted to touch base here with you, going back to the fact that we do travel to see our investments. Actually, we go to see them after we purchase them. We don't go and see it before we purchase them. We do the analysis based on the things that we've been speaking about. But we do believe it's a key component when we're trying to sell a turnkey property, which is ready and has the tenant on it. That's what the investor has to take a look at. If you have the team of people, which you do also mention that in your book, if you have the team of people that will manage that property for you, it doesn't matter where it is, as long as it has all these components, because it's already a turnkey. And all of investors, they're coming from outside of the US. So it doesn't really matter if it's Fresno or if it's Miami or if it's St. Louis, they're still having to come out. As long as we have the team in place that
Right.
will manage it and inform for them.
Yeah, I agree 1000%. The only thing I would add on top of that, just to make it a little extra spicy for you, is the other thing you should supply the investors, which I'm sure you do, is your communication expectations, right? Because every team manages differently. Their reports are different. Frankly, your investors may or may not want different information, but you wrap that, turnkey property cash flow, greater than 6%, you wrap around that communication. And this is how property manager XYZ will communicate with you. Here's the application. Here's the URL. Oh, by the way, they'll send you one Zoom, or they'll send you one video walkthrough a month, or whatever it is. Man, you've got to make it easy, and you've got to think like an investor. So the only thing I would add to that is, how can we work into the process communication? Because that's what investors worry about, right? If I'm sitting in Santiago in a penthouse and I've got investments in 5 different American cities, I want to feel good about consistent communication. And of course, always remember, good news is great, but bad news doesn't get better with time, right? So when something bad happens, a window breaks, water heater, whatever, just over communicate. That's what some people get wrong, but I like what you're doing.
Thank you. I don't know. I mean, we have a lot of people here in the Zoom, I'm just trying to see all this faces and names that I don't recognize them all. I was just, is there anybody out there that was listening to us who wants to ask Michael a question? He's been extremely generous with his time with us. And I don't know if any of you have a specific question. You can do it in Spanish and we'll be able to translate for him. Anybody out there? Take advantage.
Also, everybody, I don't know, Michael, if you can tell about your YouTube channel and what's the purpose of it, because it's really amazing. I follow it almost daily, and for me, you hit a lot of nice topics in the actual market, not only real estate.
Thank you. So one of the things I had to do once I retired is find a new passion. And my passion obviously is to help people with becoming better financial, and then ultimately financially independent, right? That's my story. So one of the things I did was a YouTube channel called One Rental at a Time. I put out at least 2 or 3 videos every day. So it starts at 7:30 Pacific. I put out something called my daily financial news. And unlike other YouTube channels, I do all of this stuff live. I don't edit. There's no walkout music. There's nothing fancy. I have notes, right? Notes like this. And I just go through what I saw today. And again, you have to remember what I care about. I care about consumers, because consumers are my competition. When I'm trying to buy a house, who do I compete with? Consumers. So I'm trying to figure out what they're doing. And then I worry about cost of capital. Everything else is just extra. So you'll get a daily financial news video every day live at 7:30. And then if you watch after, it's obviously recorded. Then I talk about what's going on in my business. I do walkthroughs of my projects. I just loaded a total slumlord property here in the last 30 minutes, maybe 60 minutes. I do an expert series. I have 3 or 4 experts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on my channel every morning at 8. Those 4 days, and these are people that make me look small, right? I have almost 200 units. These people make me look small, so we get to talk about lots of fun topics. And I do a live session every Saturday at 8 a.m. Pacific, where I just turn on YouTube Live and go, ask me questions. So I do whatever I can to help. And if you want to check it out, One Rental at a Time, hit subscribe. That'd be great.
I have a question. You said that you have 200 units. You have property managers for all those units. How do you deal with 200 units? Because that's a big portfolio. Yeah.
Well, we've gotten really good at it. We have. It's obvious. I'm spoiled. First off, let's realize that it didn't always work this way, but it has the last 5 years. So I have one account manager at my property manager that's just for us, Olivia and I. Okay. We've set up communications. We have checkpoints throughout the week. We've just set all our expectations. So I spend oh man, this sounds terrible. I probably spend less than 2 hours a week dealing with that
Managing.
portfolio. Yeah, it's pretty.
So
pretty
you have
cool.
kind of like somebody with account license managing it for you. I mean, doing the property management for you.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the things you are do as the owners, you define the box. You know, for me, right? If there's a repair under $100, don't bother me. My time's worth more than that.
Yes.
You know, the other thing, if somebody's late, you post a 3-day notice on the 5th, right? So we've worked out all the stuff that we have to talk about over the last 20 years. We have a checklist. So I only get questions if they're above a certain threshold, because it's a decision. If there's a tenant where there's a question, I get to make, I'm the veto power. But yeah, once you set up the communication box, and why I was so adamant about communication earlier is that's for the owner, right? The investor, the person that's putting in the capital. If they set up the communication, which I think I own that.
Mhm.
And then I manage to those expectations, life gets good. And yeah, less than 2 hours a week.
I have a question for you.
Hi.
When you say that you have a manager and that you are spending just a couple of hours a week to speak with him, this pandemic happened, and then even the government suggested it's okay not to, you know, pay your rent, and they're not gonna be kicking you out. How did you handle that? How many, you know, of those people or cases do you have, and how did you and your manager, property manager, deal with this?
I am so glad you asked that question.
Yes.
So we heard about the eviction moratorium back in early March in California, right? We had an inkling that our governor was going to go that direction, and they were going to be the first state to go that way. So I remember it like it was yesterday. Sunday morning, I have a meeting with my property management contact, and the owner. I'm like, you get your ass in the room. We are going to have a conversation because I don't know what's coming, right? I have 200 doors, and if nobody pays, I'm screwed, right? That's the panic that was in my head. So what did we do? Right? We went through our entire portfolio. We found out that about 80% of our tenants, because we have the applications, were not in professions that would likely be impacted, right? Retail, restaurants, all of that. So we felt good about 80%. About another 10% of our tenants were Section 8, which I don't know if they have that everywhere, but that means housing assistant. So the tenant doesn't really pay anything. So that meant about 90% of our portfolio we had some concern about, but not a lot. So that left the last 10%. So we created a hit list of the top 20, and we just over communicated and consistently over communicated. What do you need? What's going on? Are you impacted? We were proactive in reaching out. Now what has happened since, because that was early March, so March collections was fine. April, May, June, July, August were all okay. We're obviously now in September. September is not bad either. But I mean, what people really want to hear is we're down about 50 grand. We're down about $50,000 collectively across our entire portfolio. Really, that's two and a half tenants. One tenant stopped paying in March. They're going to play the game. They've actually gone out and bought a new car, right? So they're just clearly playing the game. They're like, we're not going to pay you rent. And I'm in California. So I fear they're going to get 15 to 18 months of free rent. Then they're going to ghost me. And I'm going to be out $18,000 from that one unit. That's one unit. Another unit, stopped paying in June or July. I believe that one's legit, right? They had some family things, broke up. You know, we're going to work with that person. And I've already given some months free. Because again, the key for me is communication. The first tenant's not communicating. They're throwing away our notices. They're peeing on them. They're just being mean, right? The second one is communicating with us. And we've given 3 months rent. We're understanding. At some point, you got to just realize this is a horrible situation for folks. But at the end of the day, you know, we're out, 50 grand, and it could get worse. But again, I'm conservative. I always was. I was proactive. So it's been much better than I feared, right? That phone call in March was frightening because if you have, millions of dollars in debt and no one's paying, that's a problem.
Mhm.
But thankfully, we live conservatively. We live way below our means. We have financial wherewithal to pay off our stuff. But I was really nervous in March, which is, I think, your question. And thus far, through September 16th, collections have been over 94% every month. So really not that bad. Most months are 97, so it's really not that much worse.
That's it.
Yeah, I have one more question, which, I'm doing a research about the millennials, and you talked about that. Because, here in where we're at in Doral, the average purchase age is 32 and 35. That's where they actually start buying, which is right around where the millennials are. However, the research that I am finding now, it's kind of interesting because I do think the millennials are more towards or more open towards buying investment properties than their own personal property. And that came about for an article, or people are seeing that some of the millennials that we're looking at, they don't really know where they're going to be settled. They're going to be here for a long time, or they're going to move, or, so they don't want to deal with the hassle of buying and selling their homestead. They much rather want something that they can, buy as an investment, have all that positive leverage that it doesn't matter where they're going to be living within 2 years, they can keep it. And I thought that was very interesting to see, because they're not very attached to, like, for instance, a lot of millennials that I know, they don't even want to own a car.
Yeah, no, I have a daughter who's 29. Yeah, no car. Yep.
I don't want a car, so I don't want a home, but I do want to live well.
Yeah.
And the investment scenario for them allows them to think, okay, if I have an investment, I will be able to achieve a portfolio that allows me to live well wherever I want. And if I want to move, it doesn't matter. I'll just pick up my stuff and move. Yeah. So if you heard anything about that, if you have more information about the millennials of how they think, or how can we offer them this type of investment?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there. First and foremost, I have a millennial. Teresa, my daughter's 29. So to say I know how she thinks is probably a stretch. I know, as her dad, I'm not sure what's going on sometimes. But yeah, I do think the millennials are just different than Gen X, which is where I am on the scale. Like we talked about my daughter not having a car. She didn't have a license until she was 22. I mean, I had my license on my 16th birthday, right? It's just very different. I do think there is some, millennials, it's true. They like freedom, and they see a house as an anchor, right? It keeps them somewhere. I'm going to be very curious if that's true in 12 or 18 months, because again, they're in their 30s now. Right? It was cute, when you're 20 and 22 and 26 to live downtown and do the nightlife and all of that stuff. But, I was 20 once also, and that eventually gets a little long in the tooth. So we'll see. I think millennials successfully delayed becoming. I think they're going to do that again. Like they won't be 40 and not live downtown or live downtown. Kids, most people, not ideal. It's going to change, and I think this crisis could accelerate things, but I could be wrong. You asked for my opinion.
Very interesting. I'm telling you, I'm fascinated with this millennial mentality, because my nephew, like you.
Hello. Did we lose the host?
I think Christina
dropped. Internet got her. How you doing, Karen?
I have a question.
This was a very hard topic for
people here.
Okay, so
I think
I have
Karen.
Yes,
Karen was asking.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
I have a question. You say emergency funds, right? Has to be at least 6 months, okay, for every of your property. That's responding to whatever was asking Christy. Okay, in this scenario, I think your emergency fund was helping for each
Yeah.
property. How much or how many months do you think you save for emergency funds?
Yeah, what I typically tell people now is, in the beginning, you want 5,000 per house.
Mhm.
But once you get to a certain level, like probably 5 or 6, you funds $50,000 and every 200. It's because emergencies don't happen all over the place. Usually 1 or 2, and then once they like I had a roof go out at one of my apartments 2 seasons ago. It was $20,000. So we 20,000, and then for 2 or 3 months we built our fund
Oh.
to 50. So in the beginning, I just 5,000. Market maybe 10, but 1,000.
Oh. Any other question?
Mhm.
Yeah, I posted and I already had a mortgage. Is there, at least here in Ecuador, there is like a required?
I'm sure. So I'm sure that type of insurance exists in the US. I do not have any of it. What would typically happen in the US is your will or trust would kick in. And in this case, if I die and Olivia, my wife, is still here, she would get notified that I have passed on. And then the asset, which is tied to the note, she could sell it. She could keep paying with the rent. But that asset, now that I'm gone, I'd be responsible for paying that note. So there would be a sale unless Olivia wanted to refi or move the mortgage into her name, for example. But yeah, once I die, that causes what's called estate planning or estate execution, which means your will or trust kicks in. I'm sure that type of insurance exists. I just don't have any of it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, of course.
Talking about insurances, do you require your tenants to have their own
Yes.
insurance for inside?
Yeah, so I require in the lease renter's insurance, which is what you're referring to, right at their property.
Yes.
In reality, more than half of my tenants don't have it, but it is in the lease. It covers me in
Yes.
case something happens. I can't legally by law require it, hence I can't, but I can recommend it. I have them sign the lease agreement that says rental insurance is required. They initial it. So if there's ever a problem, I could say, hey, look, they knew. But I legally can't require it or use that as a reason to say no. But I certainly make it known that we strongly suggest it.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone else has a last question, but we do want to respect your time, and we absolutely encourage everyone here in the Zoom. There's over 30 people here in the Zoom call. Should definitely follow you in your YouTube channel. Spectacular. You do offer very generously also an hour training on one rental at a time, which is fantastic. I think that everybody should go and just get the free training. If they want to know more about it, it's definitely worth having your book. We're so thrilled to have received them signed
Thank
by you. We're going to be giving copies away to specific people and to our customers. And I am sure that soon we're going to have to do another order from the books, right?
Very
Because
cool. Yeah.
everybody has been telling us that they want the autograph version. See,
Yeah, look at that.
autograph.
That's right.
By Michael. It's been so great to have you. We do feel you as a part of, as our team, as our family.
Awesome.
We do need more people like you that want to share and help us, baby investors as ourselves that
Awesome.
want to do this for a living and do want to retire to achieve the dream that we have, which is becoming millionaires with real estate and allowing other people to become millionaires. I don't know if you've seen Jose's business card. It says we are in the business of creating millionaires. So
I like that.
have it in our business card. It says that's our main goal.
That's great. Yeah, well, do me a favor. Let me know when you want to do this again. I got nothing to do all day. So if you want to do another call in a month or so, you know, you just let me know.
We really appreciate that, Michael.
Thank you.
We definitely will. I'm going to have my team read the book because I do want them to, for the next Zoom that we have within a month or so, for them to become prepared and ask specific questions about what they read. So I
Awesome.
think that's going to be a must. I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to.
And if I could ask for a favor, if you're in one of these foreign countries, if you don't mind taking a selfie with the book with maybe some of your city landscape behind you, that would be really cool for me to get.
We're sure we can do.
Absolutely. You'll get one at the end of the year for sure. Somewhere else in the US.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, for your time.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
care.
you. Just in case if anybody from Real Estate Solutions wants to stay logged in for a couple of questions, you're more than happy to stay. For our guests, nuestros invitados, las personas que se han unido, ya no tenemos que seguir hablando en inglés. Pero si quieren quedarse unos minutos más, hacer cualquier tipo de pregunta, estamos aquí disponibles para responderles. José es el director de inversiones de mi oficina. Para los colegas que nos están escuchando, clientes, si tienen alguna pregunta específica, por favor, déjennos saber.
Una pregunta, Cristina. Soy Ana. Me gustaría saber, cuando él dice que si invertimos, no sea FHA, eso es como para poner el límite de la cantidad, ¿verdad? ¿Qué cantidad sería esa más o menos? ¿Como de 300,000?
Él no se estaba refiriendo al asunto de que tú compres con FHA, él se estaba refiriendo al
De que van a financiar al
que las personas que van a comprar la inversión cuando tú la vendas,
sí, eso
probablemente van a usar el FHA. El FHA está ahora, el máximo de FHA es $310,000.
310. O sea, él recomienda siempre comprar por debajo de eso para que luego puedan salir más fácil.
No necesariamente por debajo de eso, sino que califique para ese préstamo. Por lo tanto, las propiedades tienen que tener lote y número de bloque. Por eso es que los departamentos no califican para un FHA. Estábamos hablando de los single family homes. Siempre las preguntas con referencia al mortgage, todos los requisitos de FHA y todo eso son actualizados en Google todo el tiempo, así que también lo puedes ver. Pero yo creo que está ahorita en 310 o 390, no estoy segura, el máximo de FHA.
Y él creo que se refería a Ana, perdón, yo creo que él se refería a Ana que la competencia que es del cliente final al tener acceso al FHA es quien te puede quitar un negocio de inversión, porque pone muy poco para entrar.
Ah, vale, muchas gracias.
Ok, ¿alguna otra pregunta?
Hola, ¿cómo estás? Soy Miguel.
Hola, Miguel.
Tengo una pregunta. Si tú tienes el dinero para pagar toda la inversión, ¿ustedes recomiendan que uno lo pague todo o que más bien use parte y sacar un préstamo sobre la propiedad? ¿Cuál sería la mejor parte para invertir? Porque muchas veces las personas dicen que es mejor trabajar con el dinero de los demás, pero yo veo que ¿cuál sería la mejor opción? ¿Pagar toda la propiedad o por lo menos pagarle el 50% y sacarle un mortgage a la propiedad?
No te escuchan.
Está hablando Miguel.
A ver, Miguel, yo creo que depende mucho de su perfil de inversionista, ¿no? Es lo que decía Michael también. Si usted es una persona más conservadora, la primera casa yo le recomendaría compre la cash, porque ahí en ningún escenario usted va a tener pérdidas mientras rente la casa. Cuando va a su segunda, su tercera, su cuarta casa, que eso es algo que menciona el libro, ahí le dice que se vaya apalancando con las instituciones financieras para ir creciendo su portafolio, ¿no? Entonces depende mucho de su perfil de inversión.
Y también para añadir a lo que dice José Miguel, si me permite, también depende ¿cómo se dice? El propósito de la inversión, ¿verdad? Porque si es que estamos ya en un punto, yo le llamo el horizonte. ¿En qué parte de mi horizonte como inversionista estoy? Si es que en el horizonte estoy en un punto en que lo que necesito es el flujo de caja, ¿verdad? Porque voy a vivir de ese flujo de caja. al tener un apalancamiento, que si bien siendo me va a hacer un leverage positivo, me va a dar flujo de caja positivo, no me va a dar necesariamente todo el flujo de caja que necesito para vivir, porque tengo una hipoteca que pagar, ¿verdad? Pero si estoy en un horizonte que tengo todavía años, que puedo aguantarme con una hipoteca y puedo utilizar ese cash que tengo para comprar otra, una segunda o una tercera propiedad que se vayan pagando solas, entonces conviene el utilizar el dinero de otros para crecer el portafolio, ¿verdad? Tener no una propiedad, sino 4 que se vayan pagando solas y después a medida de que yo necesite más flujo de caja, ir liquidando de una en una y esa paga la otra y esa paga la otra y esa paga la otra. Entonces, mucho depende del momento en que estemos viviendo como inversionistas y para qué necesitamos ese dinero. Si es que yo puedo vivir o estoy bien con los 100 o $200 que me da de flujo de caja de una propiedad, pues es mejor financiar y usar el dinero que tengo para comprar otra. No sé si es que eso le responde un poquito más.
No, no, está muy bien, sí, es más o menos lo que estoy. Cuando tú quieres tomar riesgo, porque en el caso mío, es de inversión y más que todo inversión a largo tiempo. Porque yo tengo cierto flujo de caja, como dice, y lo puedo poner a trabajar en los mutual funds o en el stack, está bien, pero en la finca raíz creo que hay como un poco más de rentabilidad que en el stock market. A eso me refería. Si puedes tomar un poquito más de riesgo, entonces no sé si es, según lo que dicen, pagar la casa y más bien hacerse uno a una segunda casa.
Es correcto. Es correcto. Los préstamos ahora para inversionistas extranjeros a nivel convencional están más o menos al 6%. Entonces, lo que dice Michael, ¿verdad? Si es que usted está recibiendo un préstamo al 6%, pero su cash on cash le está dando un 10 o un 12%, realmente está haciendo 4 puntos sobre el dinero que le prestaron, ¿verdad? Y se está pagando solo. Entonces, es una excelente inversión con un riesgo muy bajo.
Sí, ese es en el caso de los inversionistas. Miguel, Cristina, te presento, él es una persona que vive aquí en Miami y tiene muy buenas oportunidades con muy buenos intereses de crédito. Eso es una ventaja que tiene, digamos, las personas que están acá. Sobre los inversionistas, ¿no? Que si el inversionista siempre tiene que pagar un poco más de intereses en este caso. Ajá.
Mientras más bajo el interés, pues mucho menor riesgo, lógicamente, ¿no? Que eso es ese es el otro punto que se topó también ahí. El interés tiene que ser un punto en que no se vuelva la propiedad un alligator property. El alligator property es que te da flujo de caja negativo. O sea, tienes que poner dinero, inyectarle dinero todos los meses. Pero mientras más bajo sea el interés, mucho mejor. Y si le están dando un interés bajo, pues es el momento de aprovechar y no comprar una, sino varias. Con ese mismo capital.
Gracias.
Que tengo una pregunta.
Cristina, hola, soy yo, Isaura.
Hola,
Tengo una
Isaura,
preguntita. Gracias. Bien, gracias. Una preguntita. Él habló de la depreciación. ¿Me puedes explicar un poquito acerca de lo que dijo de la depreciación y cómo él paga el profit de los cuando él hace la venta? Él explicó algo ahí, pero no le capté bien la información. ¿Me puedes explicar un poquito, por favor?
Claro, te voy a repetir básicamente lo que él dijo, porque los que saben, aquí es una ley en los Estados Unidos, nosotros no somos contadores y no podemos hablar o omitir opinión con todo lo que tenga que ver con los taxes y el pago de impuestos, ¿verdad? Pero básicamente estaba hablando, le respondió la pregunta de un cliente que le dijo cómo hace él para no pagar impuestos o pagar menos impuestos sobre el dinero que recibe de la renta, lo que se llama el impuesto a la renta, ¿verdad? Entonces, cuando tú tienes propiedades de inversión que te generan cierto ingreso por la renta, te da un positivo, y él tomaba el ejemplo de, por decirte, $2,400 al año, hay la ley de la depreciación. Y para eso los contadores se encargan de hacerte el reporte, el impuesto a la renta, el reporte del impuesto a la renta al IRS, en donde dicen si sus propiedades tuvieron una depreciación de X, ¿verdad? Que hay tablas que se van calculando y usted tuvo el mismo dinero de ingresos, entonces no se paga el impuesto a la renta. Eso es básicamente lo que él explicó.
La depreciación es 27.5 veces el valor de la propiedad sin el terreno. Entonces, ese es el valor que tienes que más o menos deducir.
Ah, bueno, ok, gracias. Sí,
Así
eso
que en
era
este
todo.
caso es mejor que le digas a tu contador que te lo haga, ¿verdad? Porque nosotros tampoco queremos meternos a dar información que no sea correcta a nuestros clientes. Pero imagínate, él tiene $200,000 al año de depreciación que se descuentan del ingreso que pueda estar teniendo en la red.
Yo les he escuchado a otros inversionistas que hablan eso como un free check, porque a la final, si tú tienes ingresos, puedes cruzar esa
Exacto.
depreciación contra tus posibles impuestos, ¿no?
Exacto.
Obviamente bien asesorado por un contador.
Sí, depreciación y otros rubros que se pueden también ir sumando al momento de tener que pagar impuestos al impuesto a la renta. O sea, la declaración del impuesto a la renta.
Ok, gracias.
¿De qué? ¿Algo más, chicos?
Muy bien.
¿Nadie más? Que estén por ahí, las personas de Ecuador que se unieron también, ahí vemos unas caritas o nombres, más que caritas, nombres.
Cristina, yo quería decir muchas gracias por la invitación, estuvo muy buena.
Ay, qué bueno, Ana María, me da tanto gusto verte. Colegas de
Igualmente.
mucho tiempo, tenemos colegas. ¿Alguien más? ¿Están todos ya listos? De todas maneras, bueno, les queremos dejar saber al equipo de Real Estate Solutions la próxima semana. Empezamos con la serie de justamente de inversiones. Esta era la presentación y seguiremos dándoles por lo menos 2 o 3 clases más sobre este tema que es tan interesante de inversiones. Así que me alegro haber visto personas aquí que no son parte de RES, colegas, clientes. Nos alegra saber que se pudieron unir y bueno, ya que tenemos la carta abierta, ¿no? De Michael diciendo que él no tiene nada que hacer, así que...
Eso es fantástico.
Que le consultemos o le pidamos entrenamientos en un futuro, así va a ser. Yo creo que es muy importante, vale la pena que se lean el libro. Es un libro muy, muy fácil, de una lectura muy dinámica. Como dice José, la segunda parte del libro, él habla justamente de los tips o los puntos claves que él usó como inversionista y vale la pena hacerlo. ¿Ok?
Cristina, José, realmente les agradecemos mucho. Creo que en realidad lo que dijo hace un momento Mike, que él está abierto a estar en contacto con nosotros, es muy importante porque ahora el mercado va a cambiar y va a cambiar mucho. Va a estar cambiando bastante rápido con todo este tema de la pandemia. Entonces es interesante saber un punto de vista de una persona que tiene un cierto nivel de conocimiento, ¿no?
Sí.
Oye, y él se junta, como dice, yo me siento pequeño cuando él se junta con gente grande. En el YouTube, él se junta con gente que tiene 1,200 unidades y hacen conversaciones ahí súper interesantes de escuchar. Entonces, si él es grande para nosotros, imagínate los otros.
Sí. Pero bueno, yo quiero agradecer a José porque todo esto nació por una iniciativa de José. Muy, muy contenta de tenerlo al lado mío como mano derecha en todo este punto. Es muy gratificante saber que estamos haciendo o estamos yendo por el camino correcto, ¿no?
Wow.
Cuando tú tienes un experto que viene y te habla y pues los puntos que nos da son básicamente los puntos que nosotros hemos podido analizar o queremos seguir, te da como una paz mental, ¿verdad? Una paz mental de saber que estamos haciendo las cosas bien, para que nosotros, no solamente nosotros como equipo nos podamos beneficiar de este tema de las inversiones, sino nuestros clientes, que es nuestro mayor anhelo. Poder dar el servicio de excelencia a nuestros clientes y poder minimizar el riesgo de sus inversiones al máximo. ¿Ok? Saludos a todos los que están aquí. Me alegra verlos, más que sea en nombre. No vimos a todas las caritas, pero más que sean los nombres que están ahí.
Ahí están.
Y ¿quién se unió por ahí? Y nos vemos la próxima semana, chicos. Que tengan una feliz tarde.
Gracias a todos.
Gracias nuevamente por todo. Muy bueno.
Gracias.
Luego.
Gracias. Muy buena la clase.
Buenas noches.
Gracias, Luis y José.